figures would show up outside of his window, like one or two people would show up outside of his window. And then one night, it was Halloween night, he's Skyping with me back then, Skyping with me, and he's open, like he's freaked out because he's like hearing stuff outside of his house, and then the doorbell rings, and he's literally on Skype, and he's got like a phone in one hand, so I
Yeah.
can see, and he's got like his sword in the other hand because he's like freaked out. And he's opening the door, and they left an Elmo doll for him on his outside. You know those like
Yeah.
tickle me Elmo or something. It
Oh
was
my
like
God.
it was so
Oh
weird.
my. Hey everyone, I'm Denisa Tova, host of Beyond the Bar podcast. And my guest today, he grew up on some of the most iconic film sets in Hollywood because his father made them. He went on to become a filmmaker and a director himself, but that's the part that you can look up in the headlines. But as is the gist of the podcast, we go beyond the titles, beyond the fame, and really, I'm looking forward to getting to know the man that is Sean Stone. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is the gist of the podcast. And it's so easy just to dive into the headlines and Google and I've always been interested in a story. And so one of my most favorite questions is to get to know you is, let's sort of start from the beginning and tell me your story.
Where where to begin? Been alive for 40 plus years. I think it's going to be a long story. Where do you
As
want to
far
start?
back as
Mhm.
you can remember.
I mean, I do probably have some very early childhood memories. Um, I would say it's kind of, is when you're that young, it's you don't have a clear conception of time, as you know.
Yeah.
So I do have, certain memories of being like on film sets, like even on Wall Street and talk radio, to my dad's films, and the sound stages, and just kind of like, little glimpses here and there, my preschool, days, that kind of stuff. My mom reading to me like in bed at night. I mean, so it's like there's a blur of young, very early childhood. Um, and yeah, I mean, again, where do you want to go? Because the story is really just of two, I was kind of two different worlds, you could say. It was the story of um, uh, growing up in Santa Monica, suburban life, suburban LA, going to elementary school, uh, having, going to gymnastics and baseball practice, and doing, and playing tag with my friends and sleepovers, and all the kind of the typical 80s to 90s kids, kid life. And then also getting a chance to travel from a very young age to Mexico and New York and Philippines and Texas. And we were oftentimes on location. Um, you know, my dad was shooting film, so we'd be on the set, and sometimes I'd be in the movies, like in Wall Street as Michael Douglas's son, or um, Born on the Fourth of July. I was playing with the kids. We were playing with the toy guns in the opening of the movie, um, and then yeah, I just or in the doors is a young Jim Morrison in the back of the
Wow.
the the car, as where the famous scene when he sees the dead Native Americans on the side of the road.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it's a cool contrast of being able to, you know, go and be part of these worlds of make believe, and then be home and have my own worlds of make believe, and play with my toys and create, my own little dramas with my GI Joe action figures and stuff.
That is interesting. Yes, and your dad being famous Oliver Stone. What do you think is the part, being sort of growing up in that setting, sort of unconventional, for many, many, many kids. But what is and I'm sure many people think, wow, that's such a cool experience. What do you think about it that people do not understand that it was like?
Um, I don't know. I mean, it's like you're asking me what other people perceive it as. I don't even know what do you think they would perceive it as? Um, like you say it's a cool experience. It was a cool experience. I think that it was it was an informative experience because, as I said, I got to travel the world since a young age, and I think that gave me a lot of access to culture and different. I mean, by the time I was 15, I'd been to like, Africa, Europe, Asia, um, the Americas. And so I think I got an opportunity to experience different cultures, different religions, different, and a lot of adults, frankly. I just was around adults. So
Mm,
um, I think by the time I was a teenager, I was almost like bored with the teenage experience. And I was much more worldly. I was much more interested in being out there and, on these projects. And so when I went to college, I actually was just kind of like going stir crazy, and I took my second year, my sophomore year, I had enough credit from my AP studies in high school that I could take a semester away, and I actually went to shoot the behind the scenes on Alexander, my dad's epic about Alexander the Great, and so that was like such an amazing, experience as a sort of my first time, my film school experience, you could say, being on set for 90 days of the production
wow.
from Morocco to London to Thailand, and being able to just like shadow my father and hear his perspective and talk to him and get his, his insights into directing, and also just like hanging out, with the actors, and then, just being an 18 of when you're 18, I was like 18, 19. And, in America, you can't even drink, you can't even go to clubs or bars. And it's like in Europe and the rest of the world, you're an adult. So I really was like very frustrated to go back to America after that and go back and have to
Yeah,
go back to school. But I finished out my college years.
I can relate actually. I was born and raised in Prague, Czech Republic.
Hmm.
And I was, I think, 16 when I came to US on my own. Different culture, different language, but it really that was not my first experience talking about completely different cultural immersion. Was when I was 8. My mom, that was when we were still part of Czechoslovakia, she got sent to work at the embassy in Beijing, and we spent 4 years, my sister and I and our mom. Um, Living at the embassy and in Beijing, and the Czechoslovakian, the Czech school only it went up to 4th grade. So then we were bused to Russian embassy to go to Russian school, and there I met kids from, the Eastern European bloc and
Hmm.
other countries, and it sort of it started to shape my perspective. So I love what you're saying about just broadening your perspective, and then it was hard for you to come back.
Hmm. Very
There's
much.
something about people who travel so much, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, especially when you're young. I think, now how do you say it? I have friends of all ages, and it's cool. I mean, it's cool that I can go to almost any country in the world and know someone, or to call upon and basically say, "I'm here." Is there anything going on? Can you show me around? It's always nice to be able to draw upon locals. When you're traveling, so you're not just coming at things as a tourist.
Yeah, you strike me as someone who has this sort of a insatiable curiosity.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think I definitely I would say I used to be more insatiable. I think at a certain point I'm still curious, but I feel like you get to a certain place where you've seen and heard enough that you're like, it's very hard to be surprised, or it's very hard to find something that really still gets you excited. Um, and I think that's also part of the journey of being a creator, is that you have to stay curious. You have to, I think I've gone through periods, especially like in the post-COVID years, when I was just kind of like taking a retreat from a lot of the creative work and looking at other things. And then I came back to, to making documentaries and whatnot. The last few years, I dove into the Russiagate story with my documentary series, All the President's Men, because I felt like that was an important issue at the time to tackle, to dispel the mythology of Trump being a Russian agent, and and then I went to do a documentary about RFK Jr. and father-son story because RFK Jr. was running for president, and I felt like that was an amazing parallel between his own, his the journey that he was on in the wake of his father's assassination while his father was on the campaign trail in '68. So that excited me to tell that story, and then I just dove into writing a new book, um, because I felt like that was an opportunity to kind of reflect on many of the things that I've learned over the years. I got a chance to. This book's called 10 Things to Learn, so I got to go back to all the a lot of the mythologies and stories that I was reading as a kid, right? Because
Hmm.
I did get to read and study Greek myth when I was a kid, and I did have amazing teachers and education where we were studying comparative religion and looking at stories from around the world and great literature and all that. So Bible stories as well. So I got to draw upon all of these different things that I'd learned, to reflect kind of as a entering middle age to be like, okay, what have I learned in my life? What am I ready to share,
Hmm.
from my own insights?
Let's talk about that book. Um, w- w- h- I guess that would be a perception. What is something that how do you want people to sort of think about as there I think about it as to me it's being energetically aligned, and if you're curious, being sort of open-minded. Not everybody is, certainly, but
Mhm.
you're talking to another extremely curious individual, which is why I started this podcast. Is when you think of when you were writing this book, what were you hoping the right reader to take from that?
Sure, sure. Um, the things to learn. I mean, I try to really boil it down into something simple, right? So, um, I noticed there's a lot of demand appetite for self-help books, it seems, right?
Yeah.
Uh, People want, they want kind of insights and guides into whether it's psychological or health and wellness, and I look at things more of holistically. So for me, it was a question of, okay, what could I offer people in terms of, um, if you could boil things down, like what are we here to learn? And I looked more to like the Joseph Campbell, or is it Robert Greene? He's done some great books, 48 Laws of Power, and what he does with his work is he's conveying the principles that he wants people to learn, but based in historical stories.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to boil things down to what we're here to learn, I believe it's a cyclical journey that we're all on, and we have to learn how to fall, how to surrender, to cry, to
Mm.
care, to hate, to create, to share, to love, to breathe, and to laugh, right? Like these are things that we all experience. And so why not look at the different stories and how again, you look at mythology or stories as examples, and like when we watch, I've always loved stories and been drawn to movies and books and whatnot because I think most people are, because we see echoes of our own journey, and we all also have, there, as they say, there's a moral to the story. That's why we tell stories since we're kids, right? Like we are told stories as kids. There's a moral to the story. There's a lesson to the story. And so I was able to go to these great works and kind of give that little, hopefully draw upon and find that little gem for people to reflect upon and help them to perceive, okay, who are the characters that resisted the fate, or that resisted the opportunity to surrender, let's say. And, like Captain Ahab, rather than surrendering the fact that he's been maimed by the whale, right? Moby Dick, he doesn't
Yeah.
surrender. He has to chase the thing that hurt him. He can't let it go. And as a result, he drags his whole ship to the bottom of the sea, right? So that's an example, so I would do this throughout the chapters. It's like, you show the stories of the people who fail to learn the lesson, who don't learn how to hate properly, like Gandhi, for example. Like he hates apartheid in South Africa, or the situation. First he was a lawyer in South Africa, right? So he sees the oppression, and then he goes home to India. It's called under British rule, and he hates the system, but he doesn't hate the British. He doesn't fight the British. He challenges the system, right? He resists the system. He works to effect change in the social structure and the laws. So it's like, again, it's gleaning from stories that we can look to and say, okay, that's a great example of how to properly channel our energy, how to, and then when to learn, when you're up against something that you can't overcome, when is the moment to surrender and when's the moment to keep going. And so I try with this book to really just help give some reflection and guidance for people. And again, these are situations that we all face. We all face tears. We all face anger. We all face challenges that can feel insurmountable. We all face, despair. We all face the impulse to withdraw rather than to share and to open of ourselves and give of ourselves. So, and also just how to love. I mean, it's a very interesting question because unconditional love is the most challenging one. It's the purest, but it's the most challenging love to achieve. So, what are the other ways of loving that, besides unconditional love, where we can hopefully be more magnanimous and forgiving. And that's the key, obviously, and to sustain a love, you have to be forgiving.
I think the thing that stands between you and attaining that is you.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This so resonates with me. I love, you said the word properly hate. And it's feeling the feelings and the whole range of feelings. And I think personally, it's the fear, and it's the fear of feeling and numbing yourself and avoiding it, or even attachment, right? It's this like quest for something. It's you really running, away from yourself.
Mhm.
And that's probably why it's so hard. Look, I mean, people buy, and I used to be one of them until I did really true work, is to you digest, you continue to read and read and read, but it's actually practicing it. It's tough when everything's quiet and you're sitting there with your own feelings and you go, oh shit,
Yeah.
oh my God, I got to do something.
Mhm.
That is an interesting uh, tool, perspective, to help people, help all of us really,
Yeah.
yeah, get there, or
Yeah.
closer.
Well, we all need reminders. We need models. I think that was um, I think what inspired me with the stories was the models of different characters, whether they're mythical characters or real characters, was like the idea of models. And it's been part of culture forever. I mean, it's also in stories and movies. We oftentimes we grew up. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, 90s when it was like, the role models were sort of action heroes.
Yeah.
It was the Clint Eastwood, the Stallone, the Van Damme, like these kind of, very strong males that were protectors. They would fight the evil. And then, you shift, then you go into life and you realize there's very few of them. There's oftentimes more people that don't have principle, that don't honor their word or keep their word, that are operating from fear rather than integrity. And yeah, so I think it's important not to give up and to fall into um, that mindset just because the world challenges you, and we fall from innocence and we fall from grace and we fall from, that's the first chapter. It's like falling, we fall from innocence first and foremost. It's the oldest story in the Bible, is the fall of Adam and Eve. So, what do you do with that? What do you do when you fall from innocence? You can you can be like Gatsby and the Great Gatsby and try to recreate it, right? And
Yeah.
bring back that mythical world, nostalgic world. You can be like Lucifer. You can resist it. You can try to fight against God because he's unjust, right? And you can say God's
Yeah.
unjust, and I'm going to fight it. Or you can be more like Siddhartha in the Buddha, becoming a Buddha, saying, okay, I accept that there's suffering. I accept that there's death. I accept that there's illness. I accept that there's injustice. How can I make peace with that? And then we need to, again, we need the models, we need the stories to give us to give us hope.
I'm curious also on your as a filmmaker. I mean, you've also you've also made a horror movie.
Hmm.
I can't recall the name. I apologize, but it took a sort of a you took a journey, an excursion to an asylum, right?
Yeah, abandoned mental hospital called Greystone.
Why?
Why did I go there?
Yeah, like how did that
Well, I love.
idea come up? And then
Well,
yeah, tell me about the experience.
yeah, sure. I mean, I love horror. I love ghost stories and horror stories, and because I think it's very primeval. There's like the primal,
Yeah.
the primeval of like the dark. Since we're
Mm,
kids, it's like, there's there we have these sort of fears of the unknown, right? What's out in the
yeah.
darkness. So it goes to this primordial battle of dark and light. And what I always liked about horror was this sort of the simplicity of it. Like there are monsters, and there are monsters in the world, whether they take human form, or if you believe, if you believe that, as I do, that we're in multidimensional realities, and yes, there are demons and entities and things, um, but the point is that there are scary things in this world. And so how do you face it? How do you show up to face that and confront your fear? So having grown up with ghost stories and loving them, when the opportunity finally came, when I met my co-writer and co-star in the film, Alex, he was, we were in New York in 2009. My dad was making Wall Street 2. My character was a ghost, ironically, because I was the son of Gecko in the first film, but Gecko's son was dead. So my character in Wall Street 2 was a ghost. So it was very interesting that like I was a ghost, and I'm like, and I made Alex, and Alex is telling me about, he grew up in Jersey, and he's telling me about these abandoned mental hospitals that he's broken into at night, and taken his little mini camera back then, and just like shot footage, because you don't know what's going to happen. It's like ghost hunters, very primal, very real. And we just said, yeah, let's just go on an adventure. So we went in the first time in October 2009, and it was really like, it was exciting, it was spooky, and we entered this massive place. Greystone was huge, huge asylum, and
Wow.
famous, very famous asylum. And the lights were still on, and we would then, like, we were like exploring this place that's full of furniture, and it's so like, yeah, it's like walking in another world, because no one goes there, right? Like
No.
off limits. It's off limits. And I think that's the point. You're pushing boundaries, you're exploring, you're going to places, it's like, some people go explore, the forests or the Antarctic or something, or the North Pole, because it's like there are places you're looking for that are still unexplored. And so in a way, these abandoned places are unexplored or minimally explored. So we just went in, and based on that first encounter with like this place and the energy and the spookiness of it, he saw something, but he's very sensitive. Like, he's a very sensitive person to like the energies, and
Mm,
so he saw something, and it was creepy. And then honestly, we heard, I mean, we were walking through a corridor, and at that point I was already jittery because I didn't know him that well, and he wanted to keep going, and I was like, I'm ready to get out of here. And then we heard something above us. It sounded like a footsteps or something above on the floor above us. At that point, I'm like, we're getting out of here. And we left that night. But I really was curious if there was someone else inside, also because a lot of like Satanists like go to places like this. They do
yeah.
rituals in there, and it was October 13th, which is the 13 is, as people say, like an unlucky number, but it's also an inversion of 31. And October 31 is what? Halloween. So we were kind of wondering, if is it possible that there's someone else in here? And it was creepy because the following, I went back and I immediately started writing the script based on our experience, and embellishing it obviously to make it a little bit more happening in the script. But when I'm writing the script, he's Alex is calling me from Jersey because I'm back in LA, and he's showing me video. There's someone outside of his house at night, like standing like all cloaked, and had like
What?
a little torch, and was just like chanting in the street. And it was really creepy. Yeah. And then they would show up occasionally, like these figures would show up outside of his window, like one or two people would show up outside of his window. And then one night, it was Halloween night, he's Skyping with me back then, Skyping with me, and he's open, like he's freaked out because he's like hearing stuff outside of his house, and then the doorbell rings. and he's literally on Skype, and he's got like what like he's got like a phone in one hand, so I
Yeah.
can see. And he's got like his sword in the other hand because he's like freaked out. And he's opening the door, and they left an Elmo doll for him on his outside. You know those like
Yeah.
tickle me Elmo or something. It
Oh
was
my
like
God.
it was so
Oh
weird.
my. I was. I mean, but no, there's no way that somebody would be like effing with him, right? There's just no way in that real time. It would have. It was almost impossible.
I mean, again, it's one of those things where it was like, it was very surreal, and it was part of a whole series of years of high
Yeah.
strangeness. And I intend to release my documentary next, finally, about those years of footage that we got, because we went to a number of places and we had so many weird encounters. And so the documentary will feature some of these crazy places, the noises we heard, the phone calls that we got, the synchronicity. That's just it's very different. It's and people can laugh about it, but it's like if you know, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, sometimes you just feel it. You just feel presence, and some people admit it, some people don't. And
Energy,
yeah,
we are an
yes.
energetic reality, and the more
Yep.
you dive into quantum physics and understand that everything is consciousness, that this is what appears physical is all energy and motion, right? It's
Yeah.
all energy. So the more you become attuned to that and more sensitive to it, I mean, this is the ancient practices from, especially from the East. They always emphasize prana, chi. Qigong is, an ancient practice in China, predicated, not just China, but in East Asia, predicated around connecting to the energy body, right? And movements and things to get you attuned to it. Um, so this is not a mystery to the Eastern traditions. It's more mysterious in the West because we separated during the Enlightenment, especially. They tried to separate um, I would say left brain from right brain. They try to become left brain
Hmm.
dominant, right? Very logical, very rational, very, skeptical, and everything had to be fit, proven in terms of like the scientific method, which is very effective. But the quantum nature of reality, I don't know if it follows the scientific method.
You know, it's almost like you're describing growing up. When you are a child, you see the world through a very different lens. And you talked about, you start adding well, obviously you're being told what to stop doing, and to correct this, correct that, and then you start sort of a shaping, your own reality, if you will.
Mm.
So as you're describing it, and again, I just go by feel. It's just energetically almost like I don't like horror movies because it scares me, and it's the fear of unknown. But there's something that's like attracting you to it at the same time. But there is this, it's a weird feeling of melancholy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, like it's almost like the end of something. And I'm wondering, as far back as you can remember, as far as your age, are you finding, was there a moment back then when you were 9 or 10 where where what you're doing now, and a moment then, like you are in alliance, like do you feel like where you are today, you are sort of fulfilled, or are you still seeking that something?
I mean, I don't think that I can feel fulfilled. I don't think that's my journey. That's why we're here. I mean, we've got to be curious. We still have to be growing. We have to be learning. We have to be evolving, right? We have to be offering. Otherwise, I don't think we'd still be here, right? So
Yeah.
it's a funny thing about life is that I don't think anyone's life ever feels complete,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the point of it, right? That it's not meant to feel complete. We're still growing, but I think I'm more at peace with it, at peace with
Hmm.
where I am in the journey.
Yeah.
Um, because, when I reflect back on my youth and a lot of dreams and things that I thought I would have created, like, scripts that I've written that I would have liked to have made. And I'm more at peace with the fact of not having done it, and just, accepting that everything has its place and time, and I'm serving my purpose. And it's not for me to maybe, even understand it fully. I
Mhm.
don't think any of us really fully understand our purpose. We may think we try to give meaning, to what we do. We try to say that, this is my purpose, but from a greater perspective, there's, how do you say, I would say every encounter, every person we've encountered, we don't even realize how many lives we've touched, how many, people we've affected, and it's all part of purpose. It's all part of why we're here.
Yeah.
So it's greater than any of us. The story itself is greater than any of us. We're just weaving our thread within the great tapestry.
Yeah. And it was not so much have you reached your final destination, you're fulfilled and you're done. It was more about the feeling of um, you've been sort of cultivating the curiosity, you've applied it to so many sort of creative projects, as you were describing, writing, creating, filmmaking, producing, and
Hmm.
so it sounds like it's something that sort of began when you earlier on, and you sort of kept an open mind, and now arriving at acceptance is that okay, what I'm doing now is what I'm meant to be doing now, and even writing the book, it's really it's serving, and as I'm listening to you, it's giving people tools, um, to do their own work, and I've sort of embraced the feeling of being in joy rather than seeking happiness, which can be fleeting, and so
Yeah.
this is yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, I think we want to be happy and we should be happy. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with um with valuing your happiness. Um, and again, just as long as it's not at the expense of others, right? We try
Right.
we try to, it's more fulfilling, as Scrooge learns in the Christmas Carol. It's more fulfilling to share your happiness with others. Doesn't, all the everything that you have doesn't really mean anything if you're alone.
Yeah, how do you feel your time is when you're not creating, you're not working, let's say, yeah, what is it that you enjoy doing?
Ah, I enjoy travel. I enjoy getting into nature and going on hikes or you know journeying to new places, connecting to new people, meeting, again, like connecting, sharing, meeting, connecting to energy of others. Um, and then also just, self-care. I think self-care is very important. Exercise, you know, all the things, the saunas, the IVs, all that kind of stuff. Um, Massage, being good to yourself, treating yourself well, maintaining this body, because this body is a vessel. It's a vessel of our experience here. So we need to honor that.
What is it that you enjoy watching? Are you binging on any shows? I always like some
I'm not a
inspiration.
big TV person.
No.
I really am more of a movie guy. I like
Mm.
watching, I love finding movies that I haven't seen, older films that I haven't seen, um, and dropping in. But what I realized with film and watching things is that it's more satisfying watching it with people. I've always felt that, you know, just when you're watching something with someone else, it becomes a shared experience. Um, Watching things alone, it's not as rewarding to me.
What is it about people that I guess you could, I mean, triggers you or shifts your energy, pet peeve?
It's I did 3 days in a cave, right? 3 days of darkness.
Wow.
Uh and uh and one of the most important things that came through was just how we share this experience on Earth, right? How much we share it with others. And it's everything from the people that help to create the food that goes in your mouth. everything has been, it's been constructed for us, this reality. Like naturally, there's a natural order that's, that's greater. But then, we drive these streets, we walk the sidewalks, we go into a cafe, we go into a restaurant. People have done that. Really, it's an important thing for us to really honor this connectedness we are with each other as humans. People have constructed these things, people have created these things, people have built these things, and whether they're here or not, this is a human experience.
Hmm. Do you have these conversations with your dad?
I mean, we talk about a lot of things. Uh, uh, he and I converse more, I think, about politics and movies, and yeah, I think that we relate more on those subjects.
Yeah, there's a it's almost like a dimension to you, explorative, and I can appreciate what you're saying about human beings. Instead of saying, what triggers me is people who are closed-minded or rude or people who lie. You're looking at it from the side of, there's also so much good to people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
No, it's people are mostly good. It's not, it's interesting. It's like, was it Socrates, Plato? They, essentially they were saying that ignorance is the root of all evil, ignorance.
Hmm.
Because people don't really, well, unless they're demon possessed or something. People generally operate from what they think is the right thing to do,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, even during COVID, which to me was like the height of insanity in my
Mm.
lifetime, the height of insanity, the height of, uh, you know, virtue signaling. But people were, they thought they were doing the right thing. And by enforcing it upon others, that's how every dictatorship is operated. Every
Mm.
dictatorship has been predicated on this is the right thing. I know better. You must obey. You must comply. Right? That's every
Mm.
dictatorship, from communism, fascism, you name it. Empires. It's always this is the way, this is the right way. And it doesn't matter if you're a supremacist, if you're, a religious supremacist, a race supremacist, whatever, it's always the idea that this is the right way. I know better. Or I believe I know better. So because of that
Mm.
belief, I will impose this upon others. So if we can
Yeah.
get past this notion of imposing upon others and get to a place of more allowing others
Mm.
to exist, and trusting that what we create, the community we create, the energy we bring will attract, right? We can build from, we can attract from. And I think that's the spirit that, you know, why people like capitalism is because it's kind of that spirit. It's like, hey, if I can attract people to it, if I can attract consumers, if I can attract money, and then, that will be more successful. And this is the
Yeah.
modality of freedom. Now, obviously, like, capitalism has huge problems with, within the nature of the creation of money in our system, for example. And there is a manipulation because of the private Federal Reserve System and a consolidation of power and wealth and whatnot. Yeah, big problems. But the essence of capitalism or freedom, I think that is the spirit that survives, that will always prevail in the face of the fear-based impulse to tyrannize, because we feel like it has to be this way.
What
And we
about
can,
you?
yeah.
What about you? What would you say that you're trying to protect the most these days?
To protect.
Hmm.
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in that kind of modality of protecting. I'm more in the modality of just surrender, trusting and letting the universe guide my movement, guide my next project. Um, yeah, just guide me to do what I've beyond what I know. I don't. My experience has been like, if I set out to do something or try something, it doesn't necessarily work out that way. It's like
Hmm.
the universe has to open the door. The universe has to bring it to me. It's like you have to just let it attract to you. So I don't even know what the next thing is. Um, yeah, my life has
Staying
been very
open.
much about learning. Yeah, my life has been very much just about learning to surrender and
Yeah,
just trust. Just trust.
I love that. Staying open to see
Hmm.
what the next door, may
Mm.
bring. Um, I like that the surrendering. It's so freeing, not having things predefined. And I even in when you have a conversation with people, a simple day to day is, oh, I must know what I must be prepared for any response, for any range of responses, and just like driving yourself nuts. Whether you speak or you transact, business, or even talking, family members, friends, is like, oh, I'm wondering, oh, how is this going to be interpreted? I must be prepared, for
Mm.
any response, or control someone's feelings. And it's always just some need to control and drive. So it's nice to contrast that. I didn't know where this conversation is going to take us, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Seriously, I began, people ask me all the time, do you have questions ready? Do you have a script? No, I don't. And not even interested in headlines, other than, some basic facts, tell me who I'm talking to, and generally, but beyond that is it's a canvas, it's a clean canvas.
Yeah, let it reveal itself. Let the
Yeah,
conversation, let the person, people say a lot when they speak, right?
yeah.
Most of the time we're just projecting well, we're definitely projecting our reality, but we're projecting our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions. So if you just listen to what they're saying, you can riff off of that, like a jazz in a jazz sense, just riff off of it.
Ooh, I like that. Are you into jazz?
I like music. I like
Yeah.
all music. I mean, if it sounds good, it doesn't matter what genre.
Same. Do you when you're in a car, I mean, I don't know if you do you have a good voice? Can you sing? I can't, but I mean, I move. That's
I
my
like
sacred time.
Yeah, I like to move. I like to move the body and dance a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I wish I was more musically trained. I'm working on my piano.
Really?
Yeah, no, I enjoy playing.
Hmm. Have you played any other instruments
Mm-mm.
before? No. Yeah, there's something about that's, again, adding another layer, another dimension. Well, I feel like we're just getting started, and it's been really, really enjoyable. And this book is your book. Is it out already? How can people find it?
Yeah, it's available from Amazon for a pre-order. And
Okay.
so if people go to my website, seanstone.info,
Mhm.
it should be linked through there, as well as all my like documentaries and the other projects that I've done.
Fantastic. We'll definitely link that below the show notes. And but this has been, and I like to ask, like, as far as a parting thoughts, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you like to mention? Any upcoming projects or
As I just
anything
said,
you'd
I don't
like
even know
to?
what's next. That's the
And
beauty.
that might be it.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I mean, I am working on putting out the documentary about the real paranormal, high strangeness that I lived. So people
Wow.
can get on the lookout for that. But who knows what comes next.
I'll be waiting. Definitely watching. This is interesting. Well, thank you so much for Sean, being so open and so generous, with,
Of course.
your time and your thoughts and your story.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's great to talk.
Yeah, most definitely. And to our viewers and listeners, definitely can find more of Sean and his new book. And like I said, we'll post the link below the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.